So they're very, very important in a clinic. With that total benchmark, you're getting in towards that $72 range. So we wanted to kind of help people understand, well, what does that mean? What's the difference there? So below that, you'll see an example. And we set the example of a clinic that just has, let's say, 3,600 acute visits in a year. And so that's about 300 acute visits a month, which lots and lots of our clinics do. Many clinics do much more than that. Some even double or triple that in some of the really, really busy locations out there. But we set it just at that 3,600 a year, about 300 a month number. And if you were to change from the average in the system to the benchmark number in the system, which means to be in the top 25% in both those metrics, you would be increasing your revenue per visit by about $22.98. And that would represent a revenue increase of about $82,728 in a year. And much of that is going to be in injections, which, as we know, are highly profitable. So this is the type of thought exercise and kind of analysis that not only are you able to do with this data, but that your consultants are happy to help with. I know I really enjoy pulling this stuff, and our team will sit often and look at these things together. And so, reach out to your consultant, talk to your consultant about these, and set incremental goals and really try and drive that up, because it really does make a big difference when you can increase some of those numbers.
Absolutely. All right, so talking some more about report updates, we're going to talk about the KPI report. There's been a number of things that we've updated to make these measures just a little bit more accurate and easier for you to set some more benchmarks or set goals for your clinic. The new KPI measures include discounts. The discounts have been expanded to include both the total dollar discounted and the average percentage discounted on various subcategories. And we're going to show you a little bit of an example just after this slide. It also it updated the net sales figures so that, because previously it was based on growth, and we wanted to make sure that it was as accurate as possible, so we updated that to the net sales. Your average visit is a new category that includes supplements per visit, acute and injection per acute, allowing you to track and compare supplements and injection sales. And then cancellations. Cancellations and cancellation percentages are now provided in the scheduled stats category. This will allow you to track cancellation percentages of various types of appointments. And then we're going to show you presets and how you can use these presets.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and pause for just a second, and we're going to switch over to our demo. So let's go ahead and pause that.
And while Chandler's doing that, if you guys have any questions along the way, just go ahead and submit them. We'll try to get to them at the end of the call.
All right, perfect. So everybody should be able to see now an example of a KPI report in a clinic. Many of you have access to this report on the call, and if you don't, you certainly should have people in the office you can work with to view these types of figures. And how I have it set up right now is to show you all of the categories we've added, or at least most of them. There are some more than this, but these are the kind of majority of them. So what you'll see is we've added the ability to see, both as a dollar amount and as a percentage, the discounts on the subcategories of the revenue you bring in. So before, you could only see discounts as a whole. And now you have the ability to see things like how much you discount supplements, how much you discount injections, and for those cash locations, you can see how much you discount your visits and various services. And so this is very helpful in that regard. It allows you to not just look at the number as a whole, but to look at the number in kind of each category. And again, your consultants can help you to map that against other clinics in your market or other clinics around the country and make sure that yours is kind of in line or ideally even better. Another area that we've added is the net sales area. So before, all the numbers provided were gross sales, which is problematic because, especially in insurance locations, that number can be inflated. It doesn't take into account all sorts of different adjustments, and it also doesn't take into account any discounts. So the net sales figure is going to be much more accurate, especially for the purposes of supplements and injections, where if you're trying to get a sense of how much revenue you're bringing in, you don't want to look at it before discounts, because if you charge only half price for your injections, you're going to see twice as much there as you are actually bringing in. So that's very helpful. Below that, you'll see our visit averages. So these are the numbers that we spoke to in the quarterly ranking report. So this is where you can go to see your clinic's actual figures month by month, and you can watch that trend. And ideally, you can ensure that you are selling as much or more than the average location out there in the country, and ideally as much or more than the top 25 locations on average to hit that kind of benchmark that we set. Now, below that, you'll see an area that's pretty interesting. It's cancellations. And as silly as it is, we didn't have the cancellation data in the KPI report before. We had the no-show data, we had the appointment data, but we didn't have the specific cancellation data. And so what's nice about the cancellation data that I've actually used with a couple of franchisees recently is you can get a sense for what percentage of your patients are canceling appointments. And especially on new patient visits, which it allows you to kind of look at, in an isolated fashion, that can be very important, right? If we see a big spike in our new patient cancellations, that could be because of things like, it could be market driven, like back to school, but it could also be done, due to things like the phone calls that we're having, the onboarding process for the patient, or maybe even we need to consider taking a deposit. And, I've worked with a couple locations recently who were getting busy enough that they felt like they needed to kind of ensure commitment before they booked an appointment. So they began taking a deposit, and they would watch their cancellation percentage plummet. And so we can watch things like that and help you model off of those things. And we just want you to know that all these are now available. Now, the last thing to show you is that you also have the ability to save a preset now, which is extremely helpful. So the KPI report, you basically add and remove different things you want to see, and you add and remove different time frames. And it would always kind of remember what you were looking at if you were on the same computer. Well, now you actually have the ability to save different views, and you can make something like a monthly report, a weekly report, a daily review, a manager's report, a marketing report. You can make all sorts of different custom views. And the way you do that is simply by building it to be what you want to look at, and then you will hit Save Preset. Now, I'm zoomed in a little bit here, so it kind of is a little crammed in there, but if you were zoomed out like you would be on your normal computer, you'd be able to type in there the name of your preset, and then it will save it under your staff presets. And you can see there's one called Ideal here. Now, what this is very helpful for is something that's been asked for a long time by a lot of franchisees and a lot of the NAC, which is to build report cards or scorecards. So you can have a set monthly review that you can talk to your consultant about, you can talk to your team about, and it can be preset in such a way that everyone's able to go in and pull it by clicking that one preset. And then all you'll need to do in the new month is add that month by scrolling down and clicking August. And once you do so, you'll get a third column with your August date. So those are the changes that we've made to the KPI report, and I think they're going to be very helpful in terms of some more analysis you can do, as well as some quicker access, especially for people who might not use this report all the time and want to be able to go in and quickly pull up a preset.
Are those presets saved per user or per clinic?
That's a great question. I believe they're saved per clinic location, from my understanding, not per user. But I'll double check that and try and find out before our Q&A session.
Perfect. Thank you, Chandler.
Now we'll switch back over to our PowerPoint presentation so we can go over our new injection dates.
So I hope everyone's excited about our new injections. We wanted to give you a little bit of an update on how these injections are doing so that you can hopefully jump right in line if you haven't taken the opportunity to order them and have them in stock. So we've had 22 locations actively selling these new injections. My button stopped working. All right, so we have 835 B complex and L-carnitine injections have been sold in total. Tulsa, Oklahoma has sold 115 of those 449 total sold B complex injections. So congratulations, Tulsa.
Yeah, they've sold about a quarter of the entire system worth of B complex, so they're doing an awesome job with this.
And in July and August, exactly 50% of their acute visits have upgraded from the B61 to the B complex.
Yeah, and something of note about that is a lot of people ask us, with the B complex, since you can't get that with the B61, though you can get it with the traditional.
But remember that there are different quantities of B1 and B6 in the B complex injection versus the B1, B6. So the B1, B6 was specifically formulated for patients on the program that has a higher content, especially of the B6. And then the B complex has less content of each one of those, but has more variety of different types of B vitamins. So I definitely would recommend that you do the B1, B6 once a week and the B complex in between as the midweek.
Yeah, that's a great point. Something a lot of clinics haven't noticed or weren't aware of, or maybe got lost in some of the complication of the new injections, is you can do those two injections both in a week. You just can't do them on the same day. So you can't get a B complex and a B6, B1 on the same day, but you can get a B complex with your metabolic booster on Monday and then come in for a midweek injection, as is very typical, and get the B6, B1, or vice versa, as long as they're not on that same day.
And Cherry Hill, much kudos to you. They've sold 65 of the 386 L-carnitine.
Yeah, so about 1 in 6 of the shots that have been sold across the country have been sold in Cherry Hill, who's been doing a really, really great job promoting that specific injection.
Wow, that's big. So we may be reaching out to them for more best practices. But
yeah, about 15% of their patients are receiving L-carnitine injections. And the new injections as a whole have increased their injection revenue by about 20%. So it's been really good to see because, again, we were wondering, okay, if they increase their L-carnitine sales, does that in some way reduce the existing injection sales? It's been something a lot of people were, a little skeptical on or hesitant of, and we always want to track that data and see if there are changes. And in fact, in their case, it did not. It did not hurt their existing injection sales at all. It was just a supplemental item, an additional tool in their toolbox, and it allowed for that nice growth in injection revenue. So for a lot of clinics out there, these represent a really big opportunity for adding some more value to your patients, adding some different things for your patients, marketing to your past patients who might no longer be active on the program but might want to come back for something that's a little new and a little exciting. And a potential for some increased revenue at a time when a lot of clinics are trying to build that back up.
Mm-hmm. And I know a few clinics were actually waiting for the third injection to come out before they wanted to do the full launch. But, as we can see here, it is successful without that third injection. So just, order the product, have it on hand, and start doing it.
Yeah, talking to your patients about it. Probably one of the most simple things, I know it sounds kind of silly, but really talk about the injections with them. The more they're aware of it, the better opportunity you have to really get them on board.
And a lot of the different flyers that marketing has created are easily created and been able to be in the waiting room, and it just gets patients talking about it. I know that I've seen clinics that have them at the checkout counter, kind of just there, and then that makes patients ask about them more. And so even if it's just a question, that make sure you have that checkout person ready to answer questions, and then say, can we schedule, your next appointment? Is that something that you'd be interested in discussing with the provider? So, just little things like that can really increase a lot of the amount of these injections that the patients are going to be interested in.
Yeah.
Just to interrupt really quickly, we had someone type in that they lost the audio, so I just want to do another check and see if anyone can hear me. So if you can hear me, please go ahead and type in the question. Okay, it looks like it was just a one problem, so let's proceed.
Perfect. Okay.
Sorry for the interruption.
Thank you, Ann. All right, so next we want to give a little bit of an update on vitamin C. So we know a lot of people have been really excited for vitamin C as it's a big, potential revenue generation for a lot of clinics, and it's something that's been in a lot of demand. The issue we ran into with vitamin C when we went to launch it was that at the kind of last minute, unfortunately, the vendor let us know that they did not have the multi-dose vials that they had originally, we had originally been intending on purchasing, and that they had originally said they had. They only had single-dose vial formulation. And the difference there is very straightforward without getting into all the details. Single-dose vial just means that it has to be used pretty much the same day and often within only a certain number of hours when it's open. And that presents a big kind of logistics barrier for us. And so we're currently in the process of working with the vendor to evaluating what testing would be needed and how quickly that testing can be done for the multi-dose vials. We just wanted to let everybody know because we get a lot of questions on this. They are still on hold. But the good news is that the other injections have been selling quite well in those locations that are promoting them. So we would really encourage locations not to wait, not to put all your eggs in the basket of vitamin C. We would highly recommend launching and trying these other injections. Again, for those, they're very, very low cost to get started. The barrier to entry to try these things is extremely low. They're very, very minimally expensive. And so we think it's a very good idea to try those other two. And then we will keep this system updated as we learn more about vitamin C and as we get more information from the vendor on the potential multi-dose vials and the testing and all that kind of information.
And then Chandler, just to go over again, the only need if your location is interested in doing the injections, you would just have to go on Advantage and sign the attestation forms. And please make sure that you contact your franchise consultant because he or she will go over the few logistical things that need to happen before you order with Anazao. It's not a lot of information, but it's definitely, it is a step that needs to happen prior to launching the injection.
All right.
So my favorite by far is the EMR alerts. This is a new feature in the EMR. The alerts allow for time-based reminders from within the patient's chart. Using the note functionality, it has the capability of counting down. So we're going to go over a couple of examples and what this looks like in the clinic on your end.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the EMR so we can demo this real quick for everybody. All right, so everybody should now see an example of an EMR. We're in one of our test patients in one of our test servers. And we're basically looking at a page that you guys have probably used quite a bit. And so this page essentially is just their notes and reviews page. And it's under summary, as you can see up here on this patient's chart. And we see notes, alerts, and reviews. Now, it used to be just called notes and reviews. So this alerts is the new part of it. And when you pull this up, you're going to get a page that looks just like your traditional with notes, alerts, and reviews at the top. And then you can type in your note. Now, historically, when you put in a note, you would type in the note you want. And it could be a general note, or you could assign it to a certain page, right? You could say, I want this note to show up at checkout. Well, now what you have the option of doing is, let's say that you want to show a note on the encounters tab, so on all encounter tabs. This would be an important note that says, something that shows up on every single page. So when you choose all encounters tabs, or all encounter tabs, it's important to note that it will show up not only on every part of the encounter, but it will also show up as an appointment note, which prints on the encounter form for those locations using those. And it also will show up as a touchscreen note for the medical assistant when they are on the touchscreen and weighing the patient in. So all encounter tabs is kind of like everywhere, and then all these other ones are specific pages. Now, when you choose all encounter tabs, this is still just a standard note, but you'll see I now get some new options that are hidden from view by default. But if I click this box, they open up. And what this allows you to do is say, hey, I want you to tell me this in X amount of time. So in the example we've given here, we said pregnancy test needed today. Well, let's imagine that today is their new patient visit. Obviously, we're going to do a pregnancy test, and we want this reminder to show up, let's say in 30 days. And that's going to be subject to your medical director, the nurse practitioners, physician assistants. It's going to be their determination how often they want these types of notes. But the idea is we're going to say we want to be reminded in 30 days. So with my alert options at the bottom, and this is the new area, I'm going to say remind me in 30 days. Now, I could have put in 4 weeks or 1 month or 6 weeks. You can really be as custom as you want with this in order to set a reminder. Now, if I were to just do this right here, it would be a one-time reminder that would kick off 30 days in the background. And if the patient had an appointment scheduled, let's say 33 days from now, on that 33rd day, since it's past the timer and it's the first visit since that they've been back, it's going to pop up. And it's going to pop up wherever you told it to. And it will give you the option to acknowledge it. And once you acknowledge it, it will be dismissed. So it's just like the existing note feature. It looks just like the existing note feature. You can set a color or an icon just like the existing note feature, but it's not going to show up today. It's going to show up when you want it to. And so one other thing about this is you have the option of choosing how many times it should repeat. So if you leave it blank, it's never going to repeat. It's just going to show up that one time. If you put a number in here, like a number 2, it's going to show up 3 times because it's going to repeat twice. It's going to come up first, and then it's going to have 2 repetitions. Now, the last option, and again, all these instructions are written below. If you enter 0, it will repeat indefinitely. So let's say I want to be told every 30 days to get a pregnancy test on this patient. If I put in a 0, what will happen is 30 days from now, the timer will expire. On the next visit following, the patient will have a reminder on their visit that says, hey, it's been more than 30 days and you'll get this right here. Pregnancy test needed today. When that note is acknowledged with a little acknowledge button, it resets the clock. And 30 more days later, you're going to get another reminder. So that's the way the alerts work. The only other thing to note about them is that when you're looking at your notes here, you're going to see a list of notes. And when you're looking at your alerts here, you're going to see a list of alerts. So when you're looking for notes, just make sure you click this notes option. And when you're looking for alerts, click alerts. And that's just a filter. It just shows you the alerts you have for this patient versus the notes you have for this patient. Dr. San Miguel, you had a question?
Yeah, so just to clarify, if the patient, let's say the patient came in, their appointment was 35 days, and you had set it for 30, the clock starts counting for the next one when the patient comes in and you acknowledge it?
Correct. So let's say that if you set it for every 30 days, it will not reset until you acknowledge it. So that's typically pretty good because you want there to be roughly 30 days between your, let's say, pregnancy test. It's not going to reset after 30 because what if they're dormant? What if they don't come back in? It's going to wait until their next visit. It's going to remind you then. And then when you acknowledge it, as soon as that acknowledge button is clicked, it resets the clock and it says, okay, we've done a pregnancy test. We've acknowledged this note. It's time to wait 30 days and remind you again.
Right.
And so you have that option of whether you want it to be a 1-time note, a 3-time note, or an infinite note that just keeps popping up until someone deactivates it. And there's a lot of ways that you can use this, and we're going to go over some of those examples now, and we're going to switch back to our slides to kind of show them.
We're going to show you some of the examples that we've seen people using, but we would love to hear from you as well. So if you have other ideas on how to use this, we'd love to use that and share with the rest of the franchise. So we did talk about pregnancy tests, informed consent. So if you have to get a new informed consent signed every year, you can set it to remind you in 1 year. EKG labs or review, if you're redoing this every 6 months, and again, this is up to the policies in your clinic, you can set a 6-month reminder. Referrals is another great one. So if you have to get 8 referrals, you can set it to remind you on your 7th referral that it's time to contact their PCP and get an updated referral.
Yeah, and one note on that, when you use visits, it's very similar to days, it just counts down visits. So if you said, remind me in 5 visits, 5 visits later, you're going to get that reminder, and it's going to remind you that, hey, it's time for whatever it is that you put the note in. And you can set that to repeat once, or you can set it to repeat regularly. You could also say, hey, remind me every 1 visit for 5 visits. And then you'll get a reminder for 5 visits in a row. And then after that 5th visit, once you've acknowledged it, once you've acknowledged 5 notes, it's going to go ahead and drop off and stop repeating. So the number of ways you can use this is really, there's quite a few. It's nearly infinite. We are very excited to see how clinics use this. But, there's all sorts of different options they have in terms of, reminders. And it's something we've been asked for a really long time because you don't want all these notes showing up every day and it says, hey, do this once a month or do this once a year, because it doesn't give you a lot of, notice. It's much easier when they only pop up when you need them.
Yeah. And when you go by visits, Chandler, would that be any type of visit? So if they come in for a midweek injection, that's counted as a visit?
It's a great question. It counts visits that are really, the archetypes of the Medi weight loss program, if you will. So it doesn't count injections. It doesn't count others. But it will count restarts. It will count acute visits, wellness visits, short-term maintenance visits. It will count all the visits that are really dominant phases of the program. That way, if you say, I want to be reminded in 4 visits, it's unlikely you're concerned with the injection or the other visits. You're more likely looking at the weekly visits that we're seeing them for. And while we recognize there might be circumstances outside that, in those you could use days, weeks, months, and of course, this is a new feature. So as we see how people use it, we'll make adjustments and adaptations to it if necessary.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And this last example is the verification of benefits. And I think that was the #1 reason for most of the clinics that I've spoke to on why they wanted to have this feature. So it was a reminder for them to re-verify their benefits, or if maybe it's a notification that the patient's getting really close to their meeting their deductible, and they want to, check it in 2, 3, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, depending on however long, how much of a deductible they have left. So I thought that was a really great example as well.
All right, so we're going to introduce Dr. San Miguel here to kind of go over some information about the informed consents and what's coming our way with those.
All right, so one of the things I wanted to go over, first of all, is why are we even changing the informed consents, right? We already had one, why are we changing it now? So what happened was that as we started with the concept of bringing in more at the same time, we didn't want the staff to have to be able to keep track of who had signed what. So what we did is we knew that we had to condense, at least for the Medi weight loss patients, we had to condense it all into one informed consent, which then led for us to do a full review of our current Medi weight loss consent form. And so it is lengthier, as you can imagine, but it does cover everything for Medi weight loss and Medi living patients. So that means that your Medi weight loss patients, once they sign the new consent form, they can receive any of the services in Medi weight loss or Medi living with just one consent form. Another thing that we noticed is that the old consent form for Medi weight loss needed some restructure and reorganization. And I think what had happened during the years is we have added different clauses and different sentences, and you can imagine that after 15 years, it does become a little choppy. So I kind of, with Dr. Guzman, sat down in the legal department to see how we could better reorganize the entire document and make it topic specific. So, and the purpose of this is to make it easier for the provider to kind of be able to sit down with the patient and go through the informed consent, as well as the patient being able to read on their own. So we wanted to make it more organized and easier for the patient and the provider to go through. We also clarified a lot of the topics that from a legal standpoint we thought was extremely important. One of them were the options that patients have to fill prescriptions. So we always want to make sure, and because it's a legal thing, that patients understand that they have the ability to fill their prescriptions either at their pharmacy, using their insurance, which most insurance don't cover, but using their insurance, they can be dispensed at the location if the state legislation permits it, or they can just take the prescription with them and take them wherever they want. So we wanted to make sure that we clarified the options for filling prescriptions. We wanted to further clarify a lot of prescription guidelines and make it a lot clearer for the patient to understand, as well as how important it is for patients to notify their providers about different medical conditions that they have and different medications or over-the-counter supplements that they're taking. I believe that this wasn't emphasized enough in the past, and I believe from a provider standpoint, it is extremely important that patients understand their responsibility as well to notify the clinicians and the staff of different medical conditions that they might have or different supplements or medications that they're taking. I have seen it so much in the patients that I see that the patients just get lazy and they don't fill out the past medical history correctly or their medications, or they don't say specific medications that they take, or over-the-counter drugs. And all of these can make an effect not only on the program, but also on the patients and their prescriptions with the appetite suppressants. So this is extremely important. We wanted the patient to understand that they also have a responsibility of disclosing this information to us. So because it became lengthier, what I decided to do was to create cheat sheets for the providers, not only for them to be able to sit down and understand the new informed consent, but also for them to kind of have a cheat sheet on the topics that they're going to cover with the patient. And those this is what they look like, and they are on Advantage right now. The new informed consents aren't available yet. We are waiting to be able to integrate them digitally as well, so they are equal on both paper and digitally. So those will be coming soon, and we'll make sure we put up a Medi News post for that. But these bulleted cheat sheets that I made for the providers are available, and I'll give you just a few examples of what the new Medi Weight Loss Informed Consent has, what's going to be covered in that. I also want to make a very important note that these are for internal use only. Please do not in any way give these to patients as a summary of what's included. They do have to read the whole consent forms it's very important legally. So these are just for the providers to use as cheat sheets, not to be given to patients. So basically the Medi Weight Loss one goes over, the first paragraph is just going to go over the general consent permitting the provider to assist the patient in their weight reduction efforts, as well as acknowledging the different components of the program, like the very low calorie diet, exercise, behavior mod, as well as the supplements and the fact that it might include injections like the metabolic booster B1, B6. Goes over risks and benefits in general, as well as the risks of being obese. And I think a lot of times we go over the risks and benefits of the program, but we omit the fact that there are a lot of risks of being obese as well. There's risk of rapid weight loss and possible contraindications to the program. So that's like the first big part of it, just goes over a general consent and the program. And then it's going to go into topic specific between prescriptions, medications, and injections. And you guys can go ahead and go on Advantage and take a look at that. Again, we went over the options of PDC and that the patient can pay the pharmacy directly if they want. In the past, patients have thought that we somehow make money from the ones that when we dispense our own medication through our location. And the only reason we do that is for the patient to have the benefit of not having to go to the pharmacy. So it's really important that we let them know that they have the option to do with that prescription whatever they want. We also explained other options to Medi Weight Loss, and we also explained the fact that the appetite suppressants that are used, even they are labeled as short-term use from the FDA, but there are some studies that have shown that they may be very effective and safe used long-term. So we did go in further into detail of what is short versus long-term use, and we actually had them acknowledge that they understand that at any time, prescribers might choose to use medications in an off-label form. We also reviewed the contraindications to the suppressants as well as their most common side effects and drug interactions. And then here is where we go into our injections, which we make sure that they understand that the B1, B6 and the metabolic booster are part of our program, yet they are not designed for the purpose of weight loss, which is something that is really important from a legal standpoint, and that the patient can choose if they receive injections or not. And this is where we kind of tied it in with Medi Living. We made sure that they knew that they may elect to obtain additional injections that are provided through Medi Living injection program. And we made sure that we explained to them that these injections, although are not customarily part of Medi Weight Loss program, but they may elect to be supplemented with them. So they may have possible benefits to Medi Weight Loss patients. we did have to make sure that it said that the injections are not FDA approved and that they are not for the purpose of treating or diagnosing any specific disease. So all of this is included in that little cheat sheet. At the back, you will see that then it goes into addendums, and each injection has its own addendum that the patient will sign. That way, if we decide to remove an injection, the patient, you just have to take that page out, and we don't have to do a whole new informed consent. If the patient is allergic to one of the injections and they don't want to sign off on that one, that's perfectly fine too. So it really makes it a lot easier for the locations and the providers to customize the consent to the need of that patient. So I'm really excited about it, and I hope it really helps streamline the Medi Living platform coming on board, as well as the logistical aspects of it. And it makes it easier for the providers to do their job, which is always my intent. So you'll see that the other one is just the Medi Living one, and that just goes over the platform, the injections, and again, has a specific addendum for each injection. If you guys have any questions, once you're able to take a look at it on Advantage, please feel free to email the Medical Affairs Department or your franchise consultant, and we'll go into more detail with you.
Awesome. All right. So one of our last things we wanted to just mention is our inventory system. There's a little update. So we have 25 locations that are actively using the inventory system, and it's been going very smoothly for the ones I've been working with, and the other consultants I've been talking to. We've heard a lot of good feedback. Aside from that, we have a lot more utilizing scanners. So keep in mind, you don't have to do both. You can just use the scanners. If your clinic doesn't have a scanner on site and you guys are still typing everything in, the scanners have been pretty popular. They've been making things easy to quickly check people out and to reduce errors and increase accuracy. So that's an option as well. And it's as easy as just reaching out to your consultant if you want to get started. The scanners are incredibly simple. You buy like a $20 to $30 scanner on Amazon. You plug it in and it works. As long as you know what you need to do to make it work, or how, like actually what you're doing to use it, it just starts working. The inventory system, there's a couple steps, but they're pretty straightforward. And so just reach out to us if you want to get started. All right, so I'm going to introduce Randy, who's going to talk a little bit about some upcoming training initiatives, as well as some upcoming products and some exciting announcements.
All right, so on Friday, we're going to be announcing that we are hosting our first ever full virtual system standards training. So as webinar attendees, you're kind of the first to hear about this. So think about if there's any staff members that you want to attend. We are going to limit the class size this first time just to make sure that we can pay attention to every single participant. So it's going to be a little bit different than a typical system standards training. Whereas it's going to include digital courses. So we have quite a few hours of digital courses built out on digital chalk, and then 2 live virtual days. So basically, you will register via the link. You'll get a welcome notification email. You'll be added into the course on digital chalk. There's one course on digital chalk that has lots of prerequisites. So it's basically a lot of the foundational system standards training courses. Then we'll have a live day on Friday, September 25th. It'll start at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So basically, we're going to have live courses, Q&A sessions. We're going to be going over everything that was in the prerequisites and providing new information. Then you'll have a week before the next live day where you can take the second part of the digital course. And if if you're an overachiever, you can always take both digital courses before the first course. That's no big deal. So then it will also include some online quizzes and a final exam. So that is going to be coming up very, very soon. And then during that whole process, we're going to be recording all of the live sessions and converting them to an ongoing system standards training. So I know everyone here is so excited about that. And in the field, we've had so many requests for this. So basically, by the end of October, there'll be a standing system standards training course on digital chalk. You can enroll at your own, time. It's going to be self-paced. There'll be some quizzes and a test, and you'll get a certificate, just like you came down to Tampa. So you'll get to see all of our faces on there. You'll get to see, everything that we really train on when you come down to Tampa. So we're not quite sure when System Standards Training in Tampa will be back. We definitely will be offering it again in the future, but definitely not in the next coming months. So this is a great solution to get the training out there in the field to the people that need it.
Yeah, and for a lot of franchisees, it's expensive and it can be difficult, especially when you hire a new staff member and maybe you can't send them all the way to Tampa. This is going to be an awesome ongoing resource that I know for as long as I've been here, people have been asking for a core curriculum like this. So we're all very excited to have it.
Yeah, and I think that you'll find it very easy to take, and it's going to be broken out into like little segments, so you don't have to sit there all at once. You can just start it, do as much as you can that day, and come back to it another day, and it will save your place and everything. So I'm really, really excited about that. We did have one question about virtual SST. Is there a fee? And no, there is not a fee. So I think you'll be happy to hear that.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, the last announcement I have is something very, very exciting. So I actually have one of the finished new signature PBs here in front of me, and the smell is amazing. It smells so peanut buttery and delicious, and the little jar is just so cute. So I know you've probably received your samples already. If you haven't, they're on their way, but you'll be able to order them this Friday. And the marketing team has been working hard on an amazing recipe collection. So it's incredible. I think there's 11 recipes, both savory and sweet. And I mean, they just get better and better. So the team got super creative with this. And that will be launching probably on either Monday or Tuesday next week. So look from a news post from me that has all of the handouts. It'll say what all the recipes are. They'll be available on the Signature Patient website, and then on Tuesdays, all patient email, we will be kind of giving them a link to download the ebook. So that will be exciting for everyone. And then we're planning lots of different promotion. This is a very, peanut butter is a popular flavor, so we're really going to be putting it out there. You'll hear more from us, but there'll be tons of promotional items available on Social Hub. They'll be featured in e-blogs, all of that. I do want to take a very quick second to go over the nutritional profile. So it's listed up there on the screen. But basically, we had kind of two choices when developing this product. We could have kind of tried to pump up the protein and made it protein calories, but then we really thought about it, and we didn't want our patients to be just getting all their protein calories from powdered peanuts, right? So we really kind of looked at it from a different perspective, and we really looked at it as a healthy flavor booster, right? So we decided to make the serving size 2 teaspoons, which may seem small, but it's really not. You mix it with water if you want a peanut buttery spread, but it's really perfect just to like boost the peanut butter flavor of anything. You can put it in anything. So non-fat plain Greek yogurt, you can put it in the protein shake, you can put it in, really whatever you want. So 2 tablespoons is journaled as 1 miscellaneous serving. So I think that's going to be really great. And it is sweetened with monk fruit, which is a natural sweetener. So the only ingredients in it are peanut flour, salt, and monk fruit. So it's a super healthy, clean product, and it tastes great.
Yeah, and for those that aren't familiar with that style of maybe product, or who haven't seen the news post with the image of the product on it yet, it's just a powdered kind of version of peanut butter that they extract a lot of the fat from, so it becomes much, much healthier. And there are products like this out on the market now, and we're very excited to have our own. Yes. All right. And that kind of concludes our webinar. So we'd love it if you guys could submit any questions that you have about any of the content that we've covered today in the questions feature on the webinar. We'll start looking at the ones that have come in throughout the webinar, and we'll answer all the ones that we can. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to shoot them over now.
Okay, so we have 3 questions. Okay, so the first question question is, when will the alert system be live?
Great question. It is live now. It's actually in your system already. We kind of threw it in there a couple of weeks ago, hidden in a little update on a Monday, and that way we could make sure everything was functioning, give it some testing, and kind of have a soft launch. From everything I've seen, it's working perfectly. It takes some getting used to just to understand the timing and everything, but it's fairly straightforward. You can practice this sort of thing using appointments that you can schedule in your EMR with a test patient, with yourself, using kind of short time frames so that you can see them. But it should be in the system now. If you just go to your summary tab for any patient and hover over where the notes was, you'll now see notes, alerts, and reviews. And if you go to put a note on any page in the EMR, you should see a little field like we saw before that says alert options, and you can click it to expand.
All right, the next question is, do current patients need to sign the new informed consent?
The question was, do current patients need to sign the new informed consent if they've been a patient for several years or for a few months or whatever it may be?
Yes, they do if they plan to receive the injections that are part of the Medi Living platform. The reason for this is that you want the patients that are receiving new injections to understand, number one, what is in the new injections, what are the proposed benefits, risks, and contraindications. So that is very important for any service that you give, in that you have an informed consent signed by the patient that they do understand that and that this was explained to them. And in addition to that, you'll also be able to go over with the patient what the contraindications are, if any, to that specific patient. So yes, they would need to sign a new addendum. And again, this is for the safety of both the patient and the provider in the location.
Yeah, so you won't need to go on a massive campaign where you're proactively having every patient sign one every day or anything like that. But just like when we launched the injections, we were originally going to add new informed consents for lots of the injections, and it was getting kind of complicated, and that was why we were so happy that Dr. San Miguel was able to work with the legal team and the compliance department and come up with kind of a little bit longer but very exhaustive document. And so if a patient wants to get the new injections, which are not covered under their existing informed consent, they will need to get that new informed consent signed. And over time, as people come back and restart, or if you're not getting these every year, we do recommend you should be getting, in most cases, a new informed consent once a year, just outlining for the patient what the program entails and what the injections entail.
All right, we did just have one question about the signature PBs on the serving size, and it's 2 teaspoons. So I'm not sure if I said maybe 2 tablespoons before, but it is a 2 teaspoon serving size that is journaled as 1 miscellaneous. And then we had a few comments about the audio today. So this session is being recorded. We're going to put it up on Digital Chalk. But if you did have an issue with the audio, if you wouldn't mind just emailing me or your franchise consultant or typing it in right now, did you dial in on the phone or did you use your computer audio and speakers? Because we actually here have switched our phone systems to be like an internet connected phone system. I'm not an expert in this, but I think that's how you describe it. And I found that the actual computer speakers are a little bit more consistent. So it'll just help us kind of problem solve and, see what we can do going forward.
Awesome. Any other questions that we got? All right, so we don't see any other questions, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. If you guys do have any more questions, please feel free, as always, to reach out to your consultant or to the various people here at the corporate office, and we'll do whatever we can to help. Thanks, everybody, for joining.